my time in tech, it was so important for me and my teams to focus on having fun. One of the most profound experiences I had, companies that I worked for, was a company called Splunk that I worked at for 5 years from 2011 to 2016. And one of its core values was fun. And we need this so badly in the workforce today, as stretched as we are, as overworked as we are. Help us understand, what is radical empathy and how important is it for today's leaders?
Yeah, I think it's so important. I wrote a book about it because I truly believe that people need to have more empathy in order to be fulfilled at work. We are human beings, not human doings. And in the book itself, I talk about my own experience as a leader, but I also talk about what it was like to be led prior to starting Improve It. I spent first 10 years of my career in experiential marketing and recruiting. And in that time, had two very different leaders. One who was climbing what I call the corporate ladder, and all they wanted to do was just get ahead, and they would take whatever was in their path along for the ride, which meant burnout. It meant just doing whatever it took to get ahead. It meant, I don't really care that you have a personal life. So through my own leadership journey, or my own journey of being led, I was extremely burned out. My nervous system was completely shot. And then I had a different leader who wasn't climbing the corporate ladder. They were climbing the empathy ladder. And it was like, her name is Jen, stuck her ladder down in my hole of shame. And she helped pull me out of what was a very tumultuous beginning of a career, and showed me what it's like to be led selflessly, and what it's like to be an empathetic leader and truly see people for the human being, not just the human doing. And so I think empathy is the answer to so many things. It's not ruinous empathy. Kim Scott, the author of Radical Candor, talks about ruinous empathy. It's not over empathizing and taking on others' emotions and making, if you're a super big empath, sometimes that's what happens, but it's allowing yourself to see the human behind the work first and caring for that versus the transactional things that happen on a day-to-day.
I'm glad that you brought up Kim Scott, because I am a huge fan of her work. I had the privilege to be in one of her workshops when I was still in corporate, and it was so impactful to me. So if you were to describe radical empathy in a couple sentences, now understanding it is related to her framework, how is that described?
So in her framework, ruinous empathy is kind of being a people pleaser type leader.
Right.
It's over empathizing, not having a backbone. And the way that I see empathy through my lens in this book is, first and foremost, you have to love yourself. You have to take care of yourself first. You have to fill your cup, put on your own oxygen mask, all of those metaphors that are super cliche, but mean so much. Because if your tank is not full, you have nothing to give to other people. So it's first and foremost loving yourself, having empathy for who you are, the human being, and then having enough energy and capacity to really instinctively understand that there's a whole person and a whole life beyond what you're witnessing in that moment. The emotions that they may be showing, the stress that they might be under, has almost always nothing to do with you. And so selfless leadership to me looks like listening to a human being enough so you can understand them through a first person lens, not take on that emotion, but understand that person doing the work has things far beyond your capacity that you're going to be able to help with. But when you can understand that, you can lead from a different place. And that's what radical empathy means to me.
The concept of radical, of making it radical, is because you're intentionally putting that first. So in your engagements, you're wanting to pulse and engage with how the person's doing and how they're feeling, and understanding that, and then moving to other things. Am I hearing that correctly?
That's it. Yeah. And it's really, so part one of the book, I talk about self-love as the number one thing that has to happen in order to get to part two, which is selfless leadership. And that's where the empathy piece comes in. And understanding a human being and being able to lead from your highest self takes a lot of reflection. It takes a lot of courage. And if you can do that internally, you're going to be able to do that externally. So I have an activity called empathy, because every chapter of the book ends with a improv-based activity that people can use and take it either as a solo exercise or a group exercise that can showcase what I mean. Can I do this with you, Christopher? Would you be down?
Yes, let's do it. I'm down.
Okay.
I am so down.
Okay.
I'm so down. So experimental podcasting here.
Yes. Okay.
Let's
so
go.
it's called empathy. It's very easy. Okay. So can you tell me a challenge in your life right now? Just tell me what's going on with you. Give me 2 to 3 sentences about something that's bothering you at work or in personal, whatever you want.
At work or in personal. Well, I think, actually, no, to be honest with you, what's challenging me right now is like, I've become this solopreneur. I don't answer to corporate anymore. I have some projects that I'm working on. I love my work, but because I think I work alone most of the time, I don't think I have as much fun as I do when I was working with other people. So one of the things that I've been trying to figure out is, and I love these moments, like podcast interviews are things that I always look forward to because I get to interact. But when we're done, I'm going to be here in the house by myself. Kids are at school, wife's traveling for work. So I'm trying to figure out now, how do I get more fun out of this? That's something that I'm working on and thinking about.
Okay. Love that. Thank you for being vulnerable. Kudos to you. And yes. Okay, so here's what I'm doing as your partner. We're in a simulated activity right now. So as your partner, I am listening to you and I'm going to repeat back in the first person what you just said. Okay? So I am a solopreneur now. I don't answer to corporate anymore. And something that's been really challenging for me is that I don't necessarily have as much fun as I used to have when I was in the office with my corporate friends. And so now, I'm doing this podcast. I'm going to get off and I'm going to be in the house alone because the kids are at school. My wife's traveling for work. And I just want to incorporate more fun into my life. And that's a challenge that I'm having right now. And I didn't say that probably word for word, but that was the gist of what you were saying, right? And so as a person, and I didn't ask you to do this, so it's interesting if you were to be in my seat, what you might feel. But as I was saying that back in the first person as you, I saw your wife, not like on a plane. Okay. I saw your kids being at school. I saw because I can see 2 sides of your space right now, just with the angles I can see over our podcast platform here. And I visualized you getting off this show and being like, man, I miss people, and that probably would not have happened had I not put myself in the first person with you. And so what that activity does is it turns the table so much so that when you repeat it back as if you are that person, you're really filtering it through their lens. And obviously you're not filtering it through the years of emotions and, baggage that comes with their life, but you're seeing them in that moment as they are. And so if you as a leader can meet whoever it is that you're chatting with, and let's say this is personal, you can meet your friend who you do this activity with right where they are. What happens is that person who was being listened to feels seen, heard, and valued. And what happens then is that you want to show up more. If I'm your boss and you're my direct report, you want to show up more because guess what? I understood how Christopher feels. He's lonely right now. He's missing the camaraderie of work. And so as a leader, I might say, okay, well, let's have a co-working space for you a couple days a week. Or I might come up with some things that make you feel like I actually listen to where you're at in this moment. And what that does for you, hopefully, is allows you to want to show up more for me and for the team. And then productivity starts to rise and then you thrive, the organization thrives. It's not that simple. That's like pie in the sky, idealistic dreams. But if we start here, we can go somewhere.
This is the first time that I've done this specific exercise. And I have to say that when I heard you reading it back in the first person, the first sentence that came out, I was like, okay, this is a little awkward, but the more you said it, I felt incredibly understood and validated. And I didn't really see that coming. And I can see how this is a powerful exercise and so important. Technology workplaces, people are remote now, which is a great thing. You get the benefit of being remote, which, I do enjoy. I enjoy that flexibility, but that can also create some level of isolation, loneliness, not feeling understood. And then the pace, even when you are in the office, can create some level of isolation as well. And I see this tool, having been a manager for, 15, 20 years of my career, starts creating connectivity because people are feeling understood by other people. And I feel like that is the strongest elixir that creates deep connective tissue in the team and then allows the team to persevere and actually get to the point of where they can be high performing together. What are some of the exercises, the process that you talk about in Radical Empathy of how do we learn to love ourselves and become self-aware? Because I think as I have trained quite a few young leaders myself, I find like that there's a gap there. It's hard for people to get around that. No, it's not, management isn't bossing other people. It's learning to love yourself. It's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that. And there's a quote I love, and I did not say this. Author who was on my show named Simon Ong said this, and I'll never forget it. He said, leaders don't manage people, they manage energy. And I was like, boom, mic drop, I'm done, because that's really it. And so the beginning of the book, I set this foundation that you have just enrolled in this class called Energy You. Okay. And so when was your birthday, Christopher?
August 30th.
Okay, I love that day so much because that was the day that Energy U was founded. And that is the day that you enrolled into this curriculum that you had no idea that you had started until today. And then I have people look at their phones and say, pick like any picture that they're in, and you pull it up on their phone. And then literally you can look at that picture and say, that is energy. That is Energy U at work, because that right there, you can remember how you felt. You can remember feelings. You can remember the vibe of that picture. And so what the whole first part of the book really talks about are exercises to get you rooted back into self-love. So I have 5 different ones, and I'm racking my brain of the best one to share with you, but I'll do this one because I think if you know what your ideal day could be, then you have an idea of how to set yourself up for it. But there's an activity called Yes and Your AMs, which is all about setting up your morning routine, which I'm like a huge nerd. I could talk about this all day. There's an activity in there. It's called the Ideal Day. I'm going to tell you about that. And then there's something called New Choice. So when you start to spiral, you're able to stop yourself in those limiting beliefs and those scarcity statements and turn your mindset around, because truly your thoughts affect your words and your words affect your actions. But just to give everybody a tangible right now to take home, when you think about your life, and this exercise is done in a variety of ways, but because I have a very punny last name, I call it the Ideal Day, spelled like IDIEHL, which is my last name.
Right.
Okay. Very lucky I got this. I married into this name. Okay. So one thing I want people to think about is if you have no idea what an ideal day looks like, how can you measure success? How can you even know what you actually want? So let's define what that is. And so I use that as an acronym to break down the ideal day. So I starts with your I am statements. And I'm a huge affirmations person. So what are you affirming as you start your day? I am blank. Could be I am worthy. I am an excellent speaker. I am an amazing solopreneur, whatever it is. The D is what are you going to do first? And it can't be like wake up and scroll your phone. It has to be giving to yourself in those first 30, 45 minutes. Maybe it's reading, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's exercise, whatever gives to you first. What are you doing first? The I is your intake. So when I say intake, what are you digesting? Is it doom and gloom news, or is it uplifting content that can add to your mind and grow your mind in a way that is different than when you're just putting fear into your life? Then the E is what is your ideal environment? Do you want to be working from home in yoga pants and bedroom slippers, or do you want to be in an office with peers and wear a blazer? What feels right? And then you go to the H, which I think is the most important one, which is how do you want to feel. If you don't know how you want to feel, like you have no measurement for your day. And I always ask myself these 3 questions within this. What do I want to experience? What do I want to feel? And what do I want to receive? So, but you can just use, how do I want to feel? A big one for me right now is flow. I want to flow through my day. Okay. And then the L, the very last one, is the last thing. What is the last thing that your eyes see before you hit the pillow? Is it, I'm scrolling social media? Is it, which I don't recommend. Is it, I'm going to get myself this feel-good book? Is it, I'm kissing my wife goodnight? Like, what is the last thing that you're doing? And how does that end your day? So that acronym sort of spells out all the little questions and nuances within the book. But for me, that's giving to yourself, having an idea of what it is that could give more love and joy and abundance to you is the first step. And then once you have the idea, you can take action to make it work.